UFOs and the government cover-up. And oh my God, it was like somebody threw a switch, and I got totally, excited about that. So I figured, okay, I got to go see this guy talk. And I expected to see a handful of people there, but when I got to the auditorium, it was packed. It must have been like 300 people there. He gave this incredible presentation, and on my way out, there was a table set up by MUFON, the Mutual UFO Network, and they were talking about the fact that they had a monthly journal that they published, and so I decided, okay, I got to get this, talking about cases that they get involved in. And so I really started to dig in, and read all these articles and everything. And after a while, it was just not enough for me. I said, oh, I got to do something more. Well, of course, they have a field investigator training course. And I decided, okay, I'm going to do this. I'm going to take the test. I eventually took the test, passed it, and started to do some cases with a senior a field investigator. And the cases we got involved with were just not only sightings that these people talked about, but they said that they had contact with non-human intelligences. And I remember the first case that came across, my desk, so to speak. I was quite skeptical, because I was kind of a nuts and bolts kind of a guy.
Sure.
And so, but then the second case came along, and the third case came along, and people were all talking about the same thing. So I started to really understand that there's something going on, and the big question is, what is it? And one of these people said to me one day, did I know of other people having these kind of experiences? And I said, yes, I do. And the next thing I know, I'm facilitating a support group in my office in San Jose. and that's when things got really interesting, because these stories that these people were telling me were incredible. Well, and I started to learn so much about what was going on.
And it's interesting that you bring up the support group, because that's something that we talk about with Reverend Michael J.S. Carter regularly. Until the 1990s, until the real beginnings of the internet as we know it, things like that were hard pressed to find. You might find one if you went to a local MUFON chapter meeting or something like that. But even then, trying to get a hold of that, and even now, many people don't know that MUFON is a thing, that many of the questions that came in the congressional hearings were culled from MUFON files.
Oh yeah, absolutely. And so MUFON, an organization that officially became a nonprofit back in 1969. Yep. In Seguin, Texas, here. And they've been doing remarkable things. All organizations have ups and downs, but of late they've been really on a high note. They've been doing some really incredible things, and so it's really something that is very important, that people can contact them. As well as our organization, O.P.U.S. But backing up a little bit, back in, I think it was like 2007, that I talked to the international director at the time, was, oh gosh, I'm having a brain fart here at the moment, but it'll come up. And I was talking to him about the fact that people were contacting MUFON with these experiences, but they didn't have a system set up to handle these kind of people coming in and saying, I've had contact with non-human intelligence. James Carrion was the international director at the time. And so what happened shortly thereafter was that the calls that were coming into MUFON were directed to my organization, to me specifically. And so I basically started to handle the calls that were coming into MUFON and talking to these people and finding out what they were looking for. And most people were looking for the fact that a support group of some sort. And so eventually what O.P.U.S did, was that we set up a confidential online support group, which is international. We have almost 400 people from around the world that are chatting with one another 24/7 about their experiences, asking questions, telling their stories. I mean, wow. It's proved to be one of the most significant points of help for these people, that they understand that they're not alone, because they have nobody that they can talk to about these things. Most of the time, their spouses don't want to hear it. Clergy don't want to hear it. Fellow workers, they're afraid they're going to think they're crazy.
Yeah.
And a lot of these people have already gone to a psychologist or a psychiatrist and found out that they don't have a psychopathology. And then what? Yeah. What the hell do they do then? And so one of the things, and I really thank MUFON for this, was that back in those days, I think it was like 2008, that they asked me to do a study and work with these experiencers. And so I got together a team of psychologists and other people that were really familiar with the topic. We took 71 people that claimed that they had contact with non-human intelligences, and 51 people as a control group. And we produced the omega-3 study, which is on our website. If you go to opusnetwork.org, you can go to our articles and documents section, and you can see the complete study there, all the data. And the bottom line was that neither group, whether they were the experiencers or the control group, none of them had a psychopathology. They were not fantasy prone. Their worldview certainly changed after these experiences to a positive way, where they were coming back and saying, hey, we need to be better stewards of the planet. We need to be better to one another. We need to be more loving. These are all really positive things. The one thing that was different, which is interesting, was that their temporal lobe activity was different in the people that had contact. And whether or not that was a precursor to them being able to have these experiences or something else. And this is something that needs to be looked at even further. And so there's a number of studies going on. The free study was done. We are in a process now of the omega-4 study, where we finished the first phase, which is also on our website, where we went out to the therapist and talked to them about what they were experiencing and how they were helping these people. So there's a lot. Yeah, there you go. Thank you so much. There's so much going on in this realm right now. And, people like Gary Nolan from Stanford University, who's come out now big time. He's an experiencer himself, and for him to be in the position that he is, looking to bring more scientific analysis to this whole topic, it's remarkable. I mean, we're living in such a remarkable time, starting last year and now this year, and hopefully after the elections, because this is this is the big thing right now. The elections are just taking up a lot of oxygen. That maybe we can then afterwards get back to the important stuff,
to the actual brass tacks of business.
Yeah, getting back to understanding the fact that, hey, we're not alone. We've been in contact with these people. We have crashed UFOs. We have alien bodies. Come on, people.
It's interesting because even whenever David Grush happened, even whenever those hearings took place on this show, and even whenever I've talked with my father, things like that, he's like, oh, little green men. I'm like, okay, little green men aside, let's focus on what he said, which was his job was to follow the trails of money. And when he followed the trails of money to the people who got the money, they surreptitiously slammed the door in his face and said, it's none of your business what we do with your money. So if you owned a McDonald's and found out that your employee for the last 70 years was stealing money from you, what would you do about it?
No,
because that's basically what he said.
It's been a frustrating situation for many of the congressmen that have been involved.
Absolutely.
I mean, the congressional hearing to me was phenomenal.
Yes, huge step.
The fact that it was so bipartisan, that we had Republicans and Democrats that normally don't agree on anything, decided that this is important. And so, you know, I was so gratified to see that situation occur. And I think that there's a tremendous amount of frustration now going with those people that came together on that congressional hearing, because they're getting the runaround. I mean, you know, if you don't talk to the right guy in the right department, you might not find out what you're looking for, but you have to find the right guy in the right department to tell you. It's so compartmentalized that it's very difficult to get to the truth.
It's how the obfuscation is allowed to happen, quite literally. Those onion layers of departments and alphabets and people who aren't technically responsible but seem to be in charge. Well, you know, I can't really do anything to stop it, but I'm definitely the one that keeps it going.
Oh my God! Yeah, it's amazing. It's amazing.
Now, amongst these studies that you've done, specifically physiological studies with the brain, Les, one of the things that we've talked about on the show regularly is the idea that people who are, specifically people who are in proximity of craft, in proximity of entities inside of craft or abducted, they would be exposed to a different realm of technology, specifically a different realm of frequency technology. It would take a huge RF field, magnetic field, electromagnetic field to levitate a craft or to bend space and time, to allow it to travel at hypervelocities in space. So I've always held the fact that these people, much like any watch brought around a magnet, is somewhat forever changed. You know, that their frequency is shifted somehow. And it opens them to different paranormal activity, but at the same token, it's one of those, has it had a physiological effect on their brain, as what we've seen with people with Havana syndrome, where they quite literally, because of the exposure to possible microwave weaponry, have white tissue damage to their brain. You know, things like that.
One of the chapters in my book, The Unknown Other and the Existential Proposition of Alien Contact, which is on Amazon, I talk about the physiological effects of contact. And I mean, we're talking X-ray, gamma ray, microwave, multiple rays, if you will, that can induce certain things in a human body, and some of them not necessarily good. In a lot of cases, definitely negative in their effects. You know, people talk about tasting metal in their mouth. Well, that can be a microwave thing that goes on, or hearing certain things. And one of the guys that I was lucky to know, Jim McCampbell, was a physicist at University of California, Berkeley. He was a member of MUFON in Northern California, and I had the opportunity to meet with him. And we had many incredible discussions. And he wrote a book about the effects of UFOs, which is incredible. And so I take excerpts out of his book, and where he's basically, from a physics standpoint, described the effects of the various types of these, whether it's X-rays, gamma rays, microwaves, the effects on the body, and they're significant. They're very significant. So I mean, when people talk about the fact that, well, I'd like to come in contact with the UFO. Well, you want to be careful. You want to be careful.
That is exactly what I say regularly. Is and I typically motion to all the books that are on the shelves behind me. If you go through and read these books, you may be saying, like, I want that metastatic paranormal experience. Like, most of these books do not start off with a happy experience. They do not start off with, like, they may end with songs from Disney, but they start off like a Disney movie. Like, something bad happens to somebody in the first 5 minutes. And that's just it. These experiences can be terrifying to people. And once again, to go back to what you were saying, a lot of the reason why Opus does the work it does is so that people can find a point of acceptance in their life and start to unravel what is quite literally one of the most unique experiences in the universe. Like, that experience is made only for them. Nobody else had that experience, and you can glean so many things out of it.
Ontological shock.
Yeah,
and so this is something that, no matter the beginning phases of all these experiences, is traumatic. There's no question about it. However, depending upon what happens afterwards, a lot of people come to a point of acceptance that these things are going on, and they're comfortable with it. And then when it eventually stops, it's almost like the Stockholm syndrome, where they say, well, how come they're not coming for me anymore? What have I done? But there are definitely people that are having negative experiences that continue to be negative experiences. And I think what it is that I think we tend to try to lump things into one category or another, where some people say, well, they're all good, everything is wonderful, and then there's other people that feel it's all bad. You can't, there's no way that you want to deal with any of this. Yeah. Well, I think it's the same thing that we have here on this earth, this plane, if you will, that we have good people and we have bad people. And the same thing is going on in these other realms, where we have good entities and we have not so good entities, even within the entities. I mean, people talk about the reptilians being all bad guys. I've had situations where people talk to me about they've had wonderful times with the reptilians.
Absolutely, absolutely. I've heard cases where people have been taken and healed by the reptilians. All kinds of. I don't know of an entity that intends harm to you that is going to bodily heal you less. Mm-hmm. Right. I mean, unless it intends to maybe later take over your body. It needs a good host, but that doesn't happen. That's not what happened in the experience.
Well, there's so many facets of this whole reality. It's a totally different reality that we're dealing with. Yeah. And we don't understand it. We truly don't understand it. I mean, there's many theories about, the fact that, well, it's possibly this or it's possibly that. I mean, but the bottom line is there is something happening to these people. I mean, there are marks on their bodies. There's implants going on. The late Dr. Roger Lear did an incredible job of looking at 17 patients and understanding that there's no visible entry marks. There's frequencies, FM in the FM band that are being transmitted out of these objects. They're made up of non-terrestrial isotopic ratios. I mean, it's like,
Yeah.
you talk about proof. There's proof there with that.
There is a whole band of evidence out there, Les, for this, and not just anecdotal evidence, and
Right.
even last week, speaking of emotional cases and cases that I think kind of defined and helped define certain things, like the case of Betty and Barney Hill. Truly helped differentiate between an average witness and an experiencer, and the idea of abduction, and to hear somebody like Dr. Greer come out and say that the whole experience was done by the U.S. Air Force, drugged, and false memories implanted. That's a big tater to stand on the sidewalk holding, is all I kept saying in the show with the niece of Betty and Barney Hill, because it's one of those, like, these are things that affect communities. These are things that reverberate through an experiencer community and can even make an experiencer doubt their own experience.
Absolutely.
And might cause further harm to an experiencer.
Sure. And I think these congressional hearings have certainly given people some solace in the fact that, hey, I've been dealing with something, and now they're telling me that they have crashed UFOs, they have alien bodies. So it's confirming the fact that they've had an experience. The late Bud Hopkins, telling stories about these synchronicities and things where people were talking to a therapist about their experience, and then finding out that a neighbor that particular night that they were talking about saw this craft over their house. And it's like, there's so many stories like that where there's confirmation of the fact that something has occurred. And I mean, that case in Zimbabwe, with the school children.
Yeah.
And now the subsequent interviews that have happened, since that time.
Yep.
These are just absolutely fascinating stories that just, to me, proves the fact that we are not alone, and that we're being visited. And, some of our physicists don't believe the fact that these entities could possibly come from wherever they are coming from because of the distances. But guess what? Maybe they understand physics totally different, and maybe they've figured out how to do that.
well, and you brought up something that we discuss regularly on the show, Les, and that is the Kleenex box concept. The idea that there's 1,001 products out there that are facial tissues. Everybody calls it a Kleenex.
Yeah.
There's
good marketing.
There's 1,000 different ways to make a facsimile of something. Everybody calls it a Xerox. We all want to categorize things into one easily definable box. And right. I mean, that's what kept NASA out of it for so long. They even said that in their panels, was like we were woefully irresponsible as scientists to not investigate the anomalous. Right. Unfortunately, because it was thrown into the Kleenex box of UFO, scientists didn't want to follow the anomaly. Now that it's labeled anomaly, like, you've thrown it in the backyard of science, they cannot ignore it now.
Right.
Like, it's quite literally their purview, and they have to study it because the job is to figure out what the anomaly in the experiment is. Like, the whole scientific process is, the observation and discovery, hypothesis, experiment, and then it continues. So you're supposed to find the anomalies in the experiment so that you can discount them from the data pool. So they've been ignoring that. And it's interesting to see them saying that because of even just the simple reclassification of something from UFO to UAP in the eyes of the government.
Yeah, well, that was certainly something that they needed to do, just to take that the way people, thought about the word UFO. They wanted to take it away from that type of a thought process. But I think they talk about the scientific method and trying to replicate things and reproduce things and things of that nature. I don't know if it's possible with this reality.
It's tough. It's tough because
it is very tough. And I just hope that we're open enough to the fact that we can keep our minds open to the possibilities of other things, and how they would possibly be a part of this reality. It just blows my mind that sometimes we can be so closed off, in our thinking, that we need to be much more open to these possibilities.
Well, I mean, even the idea of anthropomorphizing alien life and thinking, like you said earlier, the idea that even the idea that Dr. Greer with CE5 believes that all entities are good. I don't know. I choose to look at it the same way as you, where I have hope and faith in humanity as a whole. Do I understand that there's a 0.8 to 1.1 percentile of the population that are just like evil to the core for no good reason? Like the dude that just punched you in the face in 3rd grade waiting in line for ice cream just cuz, those people exist. And to think that they don't exist in the universe, I think is a little short-sighted. Much like Stephen Hawking would say, maybe we need to stop blasting our DNA structure out into the universe for aliens to find. Maybe we need to stop giving them a homing beacon to follow. That says, hey, civilization over here that's not as advanced as you. Because
we all know what was happened to people's, like what happened to the American Indians when our ancestors showed up on the shore and displaced them, and same thing.
Well, and even whenever you talk about some of the treaties that people have said for years have existed, with the exchange of technology, things like that, how different would that be from the exchange for baubles, for land and property? Like how absolutely similar is that? The idea of like, you help us, we'll give you this technology. Basically the exact same concept. And
beads for axes or something.
Well, and it does come to bear the fact of when you're looking at these things and when you're looking at whether or not there are good ones, whether or not there are bad ones, that is once again where the experiences come in and where the studies from O.P.U.S come in, because yes, I'm a lifetime contributor to MUFON. I'm a sponsor of the upcoming MUFON Symposium. I am a big believer in the work that they do as a whole. And the thing is, though, as nuts and bolts as I am, Les, I have had my experiences in life. Not necessarily UFO, but other metaphysical experiences that have fully changed me and the way that I look at the world and the universe around me. Nobody else. I was in a room with numerous hundred other people when my experience happened. None of them saw it. None of them were a part of it.
Interesting. Interesting.
But I will never deny that my experience happened, nuts and bolts or not. I won't.
Well, and I'm like you. I that's how I started off. Very nuts and bolts. I was just more interested in how these
Yeah.
craft operated. I didn't care about the occupants. I didn't care about anything else. But after getting involved with these people, it became rapidly evident that there was something more profound going on besides how these craft operated. I mean, we just needed to try to understand from them what they were experiencing and what that meant to them, and so my latest thing, okay, and you might think I'm crazy in this regard, but I think, Chris, that the latest thing that I've come up with is the fact that I believe we've all had experiences, whether we consciously remember them or not.
Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
And I'll give you an example.
Please.
In one of the support group meetings that I was involved with, a person said to me one day, I said, "I've seen you before." I said, "Oh, where? UFO conference?" "No, I saw you on board a craft." I said, "Really? Oh, wow. Oh, that's pretty interesting." And I kind of blew it off. I didn't think much about it. It was a year and a half, maybe 2 years later, that totally different person in the support group said the same thing. "I've seen you before." I said, "Really? Where? UFO conference?" No. You were sitting on this bench naked on board the craft, and you were freaking out, and they told me to go over to you to calm you down. Well, at that point, I decided to go get regressed. And I had 3 separate regressions. And I had multiple past lives.
Interesting.
And I didn't see anything with regard to being on board a craft. However, in a subsequent conversation I had with another person, they said perhaps what was happening was that this person somehow tuned into a past life where you were taken on board a craft. All
there
right?
you go.
And supposedly they have the ability to manipulate space and time. And reincarnation seems to be a universal trait that exists. This is part of the process. I've had
Sure.
a number of one of the people in my book. I have like 25 people from the support group that have told their stories in my book, and one of them talks about his conversations with these entities, and they talk about reincarnation. This is how the universe operates.
Yeah.
And
Well,
so,
it's conservation
you know,
of energy. It can't be created or destroyed.
Yeah, exactly. So, just this physical body may decay and go away, but that energy
Yeah. Yeah.
continues.
Yeah. No, and that's just it. I mean, and I'm sure my listeners could probably quote this verbatim, but by all 9th grade science, we are sharing an electron shell, Les. We are 90% empty space. By all atomic science that we know, this is not a solid body. It's a repulsion of electrons. The crystal I'm touching is just a repulsion of electrons. This isn't solid either. The idea that I could drop it and technically it's falling infinitely and never actively hits the ground, like these are all sound scientific concepts. Like I made pretty good grades in science of all subjects, and I firmly remember the idea that we're 90% empty space. So the idea that
it is amazing.
And the idea that our vibration is locked in here right now. Once much like in the guitar on the wall behind me, you move it an octave higher, it's going to vibrate higher. Will it attract this corporeal matter when it vibrates an octave higher? I don't know. At that point, I may shed this and move on to the next dimension of vibration where I intrinsically will still exist, but I will be doing something else. That's just physics and conservation of matter or
it's
energy, rather.
There's no question about it. It's
Yeah.
absolutely fascinating, Chris, that, you know, when you start having these kind of conversations, that the possibilities are endless, infinite, with regard to what it is and how it works.
Yeah, precisely. And it's always very interesting to me the similarities between the messages that communiques receive, the people that are communicated with by aliens. The once again, take care of your civilization, take care of yourselves, learn to love, things like that. It's fascinating to me. Amongst all the studies that you've done with O.P.U.S, has the hypothesis that this is a mass hallucination been confirmed for you? Because that's definitely been a psychological hypothesis for a long time, is that it's a mass hallucination. Like, reality can't be agreed upon illusion, but apparently these are all a mass hallucination. So had that hypothesis ever been shown to you guys in your research?
Yeah, no, that has never come up, but it's an interesting idea, that this reality that we're living in, they talk about the Matrix. Okay.
Yeah.
And so maybe in that context, it's a possibility that we're not in control. There's somebody pushing the buttons. I've always had this wild idea that UFOs are basically the cursor on your mouse on your computer. And you can move that thing around and it does all kinds of crazy things. I mean, it goes from vertical to horizontal instantaneously and does circles and all kinds of things. And so it's just like a big computer screen that we're observing.
Yeah.
So I think anything is possible. But the only thing we can deal with is just like you and I are talking right now over this medium, and understanding that we're having this conversation and that it seems to be making sense to us at this time, and so but what's beyond this? You're looking at your computer screen, I'm looking at my computer screen.
Yeah.
And what's behind me here? Do I have an entity? And I've been told that there's entities, creatures, whatever you want to call them, that are with us within a different frequency, enjoying the same space, if you will. So, oh my God! Once you start going down this rabbit hole,
well, and even to go Einsteinian thought experiment on it, which is kind of what you have to do. That's the whole idea behind hypothesis, Les, is to imagine the possibilities and then through experimentation prove or disprove. And like you said, being able to reliably experiment on this, and that's one of the things that is, of course, brought up and shown with great regular basis on the popular show Secret of Skinwalker Ranch, is them trying to poke and prod this anomaly with science, or at least with repeatable experiment. Like, you may or may not agree with their methodology, people, but the idea is repeatable experiment. What do we know that we have had this result with this stimulus before? What happens if we feed it to it again? What happens if we feed it to it under this circumstance? you know.
Oh yeah,
and
no, it's a fascinating program, that's for sure.
It's
I
interesting.
keep wanting to take a couple of sticks of dynamite and blow up that hills and find out what the hell is
I know.
underneath there.
Just dig. Forget the drilling, man. Just bring in a backhoe and get after it.
Yeah.
Make friends with Dwayne Ollinger down the road, man. He'll get a front end loader stuck in quicksand trying to dig something out. He don't care. But you know, it's interesting to even see the popularity of shows like this in the world right now, and see how it not only affects community, but also how it affects people's understanding of science and how research is done. You know, I even recently released a book, a literal field observation guide for people out experimenting in the field for paranormal investigators, because what happens the day that you decide to bring it? Like, how are you cataloging your data as a paranormal investigator out collecting EVPs, or somebody out collecting stuff in the woods? By the time you've gotten back somewhere with a pen and paper to write it down, that time is gone now. Any police officer will tell you the fresher the memory, the better. You know, if you've waited 2-3 hours and all you have is a blurry photograph, did you write down the cardinal direction? Did you write down the time of day? Did you write down the temperature that was going on? You know, things like these things are important. And the day that science comes to shake hands with citizen science, we need to be able to give them things in a language they understand, Les.
Right.
We need to meet them in the middle. Even the idea of, if you're out squatching on the weekends and you have trail cameras out in the middle of God knows where, let your local wildlife department know about it. They don't have money to put cameras out and get that footage. That's invaluable research for them. Sure. That they're normally trying to get a grant for, that you're out doing for fun on the weekend. Like, you could be contributing to science.
Right.
And now when you bring them something from the journal, they look at you in a different way.
Well, you know, and again, I don't know if we were off air when I mentioned this before, but, you know, social media now, the television programs that are out there right now, the shows that, like your show, okay, that are really acquainting the public to these factors, these types of phenomena, is so important. So thank you very much for what you do. I think it's very important, and I think that's what's starting to happen now, is that people are getting a little bit more comfortable with the fact that I can talk about this. I can talk to my friends, or I can talk to other people about what's going on with me, and get this out there. And so again, thank you very much, Chris, for what you're doing. I think it's very, very important.
I appreciate that greatly, Les, because you know, I love shows out there that have just conversations and you know, panel conversations, things like that. But for me, I want to help demystify these topics for the average bear, you know. And some of these things they're layer cakes, man. They're thick, and there's so many layers to them. And by the time you've gotten 2 layers down, sometimes your head is swimming with data. And to be able to talk with somebody like you, who has spent the last 20, 30 years making these connections with experiencers, helping experiencers connect with each other, helping communities heal with each other. Because once again, when these things happen, quite literally, the only thing you can akin it to is personal violation. Les, no less. Can you do that? Because it's quite literally what many of the cases are. You know?
Yeah.
And you're
Well,
dealing
there's no
with
question about it.
very personal, private things that, once again, people may not even be willing to share with a husband or a wife.
Or they're afraid to
Yeah,
share it with a husband or a wife
yeah,
because of the ridicule factor, the skepticism that goes
yeah,
on with all of this. They can't talk to clergy, they can't talk to their fellow workers or things of that nature. And,
yeah,
and a lot of times, as I mentioned earlier, that, they've gone to a psychologist or psychiatrist because they feel they're going crazy. But then they find out they don't have a psychopathology and they're totally sane. So what do they do? What do they do then? And so that's what we try to help them with by supporting them with an online support group. We also have a referral network of mental health practitioners and hypnotherapists. And we also have a triage group we call our EST, our Experiencer Support Team, that's very familiar with the topics that these people come to us regarding, and so we can point them in the right direction. So we're really, yes, thank you. That's part of our EST group, and hopefully, if you have a friend or yourself looking for assistance, please go to our website, opusnetwork.org, and you can get support. There's support buttons all over the place on the website, as you can see there. So thank you very much.
it is quite literally, and this is a cause I can fully get behind, Les. I need to have you on at least every 3-4 months to talk about stuff like this, because
Oh, thank you. I appreciate that very much.
it's so entirely important. Without people who are comfortable enough to tell their story, with it's kind of the idea of, unless you support #Me Too, it's hard to say that you support everybody's equal right,
Mm-hmm.
and we all have hard things that happen to us, and when something like this happens, where you can't go to your average person, it's even harder. It's even harder, and it once again can break people psychologically, emotionally. It can break up
You're
families.
absolutely, Chris. And this is the one thing that we're trying to do. And a matter of fact, we're in a process now of trying to have a program to educate the mental health community
Awesome.
with regard to this phenomena, because a lot of them are not aware, or they don't know how to handle a person that comes to them and says, "Hey,
Yeah.
I just had a weekend with a reptilian or something," and it's like, what? And right away, if they're a psychiatrist, they want to start giving you pills to take,
Yeah. Yeah.
but that's not the right, way to go about this kind of thing. So, it's an educational process. Get the mental health community understanding that this phenomena is real. I mean, look at what happened to John Mack. I mean, when he
Yep.
first got involved with all
Yep.
this, he almost got, booted out of Harvard, because of what he was doing. But the bottom line, thank goodness he wasn't. And
That's
he,
right.
he persisted. He wrote an incredible series of books on this subject. And it's real. It's
Yeah.
real, folks.
Well, and whether or not it's real for you, it's real for them.
Oh, yeah.
It's real for them, and
Sure.
that's just it. It affects people to the core, Les. And with that in mind, we have you for about another 5 minutes.
Okay.
In that last 5 minutes, how can people begin to open up and empathize? Let's say that a listener out there right now who's open-minded, but maybe needs to listen to their aunt again. Maybe needs to revisit that story that their brother told them a few years ago over a beer or two, that they just kind of shoved in the back of their mind and was like, man, my brother's
Right.
gone Lulu.
Right.
How
Yeah.
do they begin to bridge that conversation? How do they begin to open themselves to the conversation with someone who may be an experiencer that they know?
Yeah. Well, certainly being able to sit down with these people and have have an open mind, certainly, and be able to listen. Sit there with an open mind. Do not judge. Do not judge, because that's the first thing that will turn people off if you start to judge. And just listen to what they have to say, and then take that in and absorb it, and say, okay, is this something that, I know this person is not crazy. They have a good job. They take care of their family. And so it's the kind of thing that, you have to have an open mind. You have to be able to listen. You have to be able to empathize. Empathy is so important. In this process. The last thing you want to do is to say something in a way that would cause them further issues or further pain. And so that's the
UFO UAP experience. Like, if we just followed that modicum to begin with, when someone tells you what they believe and why they believe it, just consider that a beautiful facet on the gem that is that person. You don't need to polish it. You just need to accept that facet and the beautiful gem that they are,
That's a good way to put it. That's a great way to put it.
It's one of those we come to the table of conversation all too often with the conversation had in the car before we ever get there, Les. We've laid a firm foundation of the wall before we ever got to the dinner table. And we need to, as a society, as a people, as individuals, we need to learn to let that go. We need to learn to, once again, see people with a point of empathy and want to understand why they believe what they believe, not want to change their paradigm. So
exactly.
Thank you so much for everything that you do at O.P.U.S. Thank you so much for everything that you are doing to help not only bring communities together, but to bring understanding to experiencers. It's so important. Thank you so much for all the work y'all do there.
Well, thank you, Chris, and I really appreciate our conversation tonight, and it's been great. I always enjoy being with you, and I look forward to our next get-together.
Absolutely. Same here. Take care. I'll be sharing links, all that kind of good stuff. Greatly appreciate the time again, Les. Have a great evening.
You got it. Hey, you too. Thanks. See you soon.
Absolutely. While you are online checking out all of the amazing work of O.P.U.S, everybody, make sure to stop on by opusnetwork.org to find out more about them. Coming up in our next segment, we will be joined by Robert Spearing, Director of International Investigations for MUFON. We'll be talking about some of the cases of interest that will be presented at this year's MUFON Symposium. Coming up right after these breaks. First, a message from our network, Aftermath Media.
Attention all Ground Zero fans. Aftermath.media is celebrating our 4-year anniversary with a spectacular deal just for you. Wow! For a limited time, you can get an Aftermath Premium yearly subscription for only $79. That's right, just $79 for a full year of exclusive content, ad-free listening, and premium features. Dive into a world of incredible stories, top-tier journalism, and the best in entertainment. Whether you're a longtime listener or new to Ground Zero, this is the perfect time to join the Aftermath family. Don't miss out on this amazing anniversary special. Visit Aftermath.media today and sign up for your Aftermath Premium yearly subscription at just $79. But hurry, this offer won't last long. Celebrate with us and elevate your media experience to the next level. Aftermath.media, the ultimate resource for parapolitical and paranormal fans. Visit Aftermath.media and subscribe today. That's Aftermath.media.
The key to good science is good research. At the heart of good research is a good data set. With the field observation and encounter log from Curious Research, you can easily keep track of your investigative information all in one place, making it easier to review cases and readily see comparisons and contrasts between them. Whether out in the woods squatching, in a back room gathering EVPs, or using high-tech gear to track UFO, UAP activity, this easy-to-carry, pocket-sized scientific data log is the perfect companion for any field researcher. You can find your copy of the Curious Research Field Observation and Encounter Log at Amazon.com or visit the official Curious Realm store at curiousrealm.com/store to reserve your copy for yourself, your family, or a mind that you want to open. That website again is curiousrealm.com/store. Well, hello, everybody, and welcome back from that quick break. Thank you so much for hanging on, and also thank you so much to our sponsors, especially True Hemp Science. True Hemp Science is your source for amazing CBD products, folks. I have been using True Hemp Science myself for well over 5 years now, and Christopher Lynch over there has some amazing products, all made through a spagyric alchemical process. Whole plant is used, everything from the seeds and stems to the roots to the leaves, used and reused till there's nothing left. Absolutely amazing terpene profiles. Stop on by, check them out. TrueHempScience.com is the website that you want to go to. Curious7 is the code that you want to use to save 7% off your entire cart of $50 or more, as well as get two 50 milligram edibles for free as well. Our guest in this segment is Bob Spearing. We will be talking about some of the upcoming cases of interest that will be featured. There's so many that quite literally there are numerous presentations about cases of interest at this year's MUFON Symposium. That's what we will be talking about. Welcome back to the show, the Director of International Investigations, Bob Spearing. How are you doing?
I'm doing fine, Chris. How are you?
Doing fantastic. Thanks so much for coming back on the show. It was great talking with you last time we had you on, whenever the Project Aquarius archives were released. Mm-hmm. And that has been really cool. It's awesome that you guys have started digitizing your entire archive for not only investigators, but people outside of the content management system of investigation of MUFON.
Yeah, you don't even have to be a MUFON member. The simplest way to get this vast and growing digital archive of historical UFO information, cases, drawings, private correspondences from famous people is just to go to MUFON.com and click on the Project Aquarius logo, and you can get a $50 yearly membership library card, we call it. And we're adding stuff every day. We're working in partnership with AFU in Sweden, Claes Svahn. Isaac Coy has given us a tremendous amount of material. He just gave us all the old regional MUFON journals for the Project Aquarius library that we didn't even have.
Oh, wow.
So I'm particularly indebted to Isaac and Claes.
That is incredible. And once again, just an amazing database of information that you guys have put together there. I mean, not only case files, but pictures, articles, all kinds of things in the world of UFO, UAP research. So a fantastic resource for those that are out there trying to research things, find articles that, you know, may have been removed from the internet, may not have ever been digitized for the internet. From local newspapers, things like that.
Yeah, we have a vast collection of newspaper articles. Again, thanks to Isaac for a lot of it. We have over 7,000 drawings from the MUFON case management system, and some of these are real works of art. Right now, we've just got the okay, and we just got the redacting software to begin redacting the 64 Leonard Stringfield personal journals. There'll be 6 of us doing the redacting, and hopefully that'll be out by autumn. It's a lot of redacting, but there's a lot of sensitive stuff, so we have to protect some people's names who are still alive. But that's going to be the coup d'etat as far as UFO research that the world has never seen.
Absolutely awesome, man. And, you know, I am looking greatly forward to the upcoming MUFON Symposium that is happening coming up in Dallas starting July 11th. It's always a first day is always like field investigators and registration, things like that. So if you are looking at becoming a field investigator, folks, now is the time. Go out, check that out, and know that your training could be right there in person in Dallas. So it's really cool. It's fantastic. You have a chance to network with all kinds of people within the MUFON community. See some great presentations, some great speakers, and our good friend Bob Spearing here talking about some of the cases of interest from this year. Once again, so many that there are now numerous presentations about cases of interest. Let's start diving into a few of those and kind of cracking that nut, Bob.
Well, let me just say that last year, we've been doing it for several years. There was a gap during COVID, and before that, we had done it for a number of years. But we would close out the symposium with it, 4 o'clock on Sundays. And it was so popular that they moved it to Saturday at 2:30 in the afternoon, prime time. And not only that, we decided we were going to do a second cases of interest presentation with the best ERT cases, the experiencer researcher team cases. And that will be moderated by Dr. George Medich, who's the head of ERT, and Earl Grey Anderson. That will be on my old spot on Sunday. Also on Friday, Earl Grey will be giving a presentation on the 3 best cases in ufology. And Saturday night is a very, very interesting new presentation because MUFON has come in contact with a surprising amount of trace evidence this year, and we're going to be doing a special presentation Saturday night on one piece of this material that we have, a tease for more material that we have, and several interesting cases that our media director Ron James has been working on that may be part of his next movie, the follow-up to Accidental Truth.
Wow. And you know, last year a lot of the excitement was the launch of the upcoming lab, where you guys are investigating a lot of this stuff, things like that. How is that going right now?
The lab is growing every day. We're getting funding for it. As a matter of fact, on Saturday night, we're going to open up with a piece of debris that came from Russia that may be part of an alleged spacecraft. Wow. And it was tested by 2 laboratories in Russia, I believe, and it came back that 90% of the material could not be identified, and they were gracious enough to send it to our MUFON lab. And our chief technician is Lynn Mann. She's been with us forever. She's a great lady, and she put the X-ray fluorescence gun on it, and also discovered that it doesn't match up on anything spectrographically. So we know we definitely have an unusual piece of material. However, in transit from the lab to me, it disappeared in the U.S. mail, never to be seen again. And our U.S. postal worker at our facility says that it was delivered to my mailbox but mysteriously disappeared. The good news is we have more. So
that's a plus.
Yes, that's definitely a plus.
Oh my God. You know, and that speaks to something, Bob, because like a lot of people don't realize that that's why a lot of research doesn't get done. You know, that's why a lot of specimens go bad. That's why the things that were gathered in the wild that may be DNA oriented, things like that, because if you don't have a facility to hold them and store them in perpetuity properly, like even right here in Austin, we had a case where a good half of the sexual assault evidence that was being held inside of an evidence locker, you know, the locker went down one summer and tons of DNA evidence was absolutely deprecated, you know, and to think about, like, it got lost in the mail. You know,
but Chris, specimens have been getting lost in the mail for 70, 80 years now.
I'm sure it's a mysterious lost in the mail. That's an air quote, lost in the mail.
There's a pattern developing, all right, if you haven't noticed already. It's like, as far as I can tell, it's like we're being monitored is my impression about what's going on.
And quite literally, that is the theme of this year's symposium, is the battle for UFO transparency. You know, a couple years ago, it was the media and UFOs and the whole rebranding from UFO to UAP and what that meant. And to know that now we're talking about UFO transparency and not just disclosure, but transparency on things like, once again, this anomalous piece of metal, which fortunately we have more parts of the debris from, but to see something that spectrographically doesn't ring and has quite obviously been worked, not looking like pardon the noise as I grab a chunk of meteorite, not like this chunk of meteorite that just looks like a piece of melted slag because it came through the atmosphere, but something that looks much more like an actual worked piece of metal that is spectrographically unable to be identified with anything from here on Earth.
It's interesting. The piece we had was clearly manufactured. You could see that it was manufactured.
Wow.
So the question is, where did it come from? All right. If it's not, you know, any known substance that's being manufactured on Earth now, did it come from someplace other than Earth? Did it come from another time? Is there, you know, some sort of foreign government facility that's manufacturing this that we don't know about, but we don't know what it was?
Yeah. Yeah. Wow. Well, fortunately, there is more of the debris and you'll be able to analyze it. And once again, the amazing new lab that has been funded through donation of equipment, time, money, things like that. So absolutely awesome, Bob. Incredible news to hear. Let's start getting into some of the cases of interest that you'll be talking about at this year's symposium.
Okay, so the main cases of interest presentation is at 2:30 on Saturday, and I'll be moderating it. And whenever possible, we go by 3 criteria. Was the case reported in 2023, the previous year, but could be of a historical nature? Say somebody's reporting it from 40 years ago when they were 15 years old, for example. Or 2, the case occurred in 2023, or it's a case that's part of a longer flap, all right, temporally, that may be occurring over a number of years with one significant case in 2023. And as it turns out, this year we had just a lot of cases that were really good, and we had to figure out how to whittle it down. In the past, we would do like 5 cases. This time, we have to do literally some suites of cases. We're going to open up with a video that our photo analysis team reviewed, and they feel that we may have actually captured a triangle or a rectangle on film, manufactured craft, slowly flying over a person's house. And our Illinois State Director, Sam Maranto, who's also on our 6-man photo analysis team, will be the first person I bring up to discuss his analysis of why he believes that we've captured a triangle on film. From there, we'll do a suite of cases. The first suite of cases is a very, very interesting phenomenon that we realized has been going on for a number of years. I'm very good friends with a Israeli psychologist, and she knows I'm into UFO research. And she asked me one day last year, she said, Bob, I have a patient who claims that a hooded entity comes into her bedroom and drills into her skull behind her left ear and inserted something. And I said, well, yeah, we get, some strange bedroom encounter type cases. Don't you know that maybe a month later, a case came in from 2023 from Australia of the exact same phenomenon? And I said, that's very unusual to hear the same story from two different sides of the planet. So I started to do a dive into the MUFON database, the CMS, the case management system, and we discovered a whole bunch more that seemed to fit this same phenomenon. Always or mostly the left side of the skull behind the ear. Something is possibly inserted or removed during a bedroom encounter where the person's paralyzed in the bed. At this symposium this year, Roger Stankovic, our national director in Australia, is actually presenting on Havana syndrome. Roger is a neurosurgeon down in Australia, very well-known neurosurgeon, and he's been looking at the effects of Havana syndrome on possible experiencers. And what he was talking about fit right into what I was telling him about the skull drillers, as we call them. And he said, Bob, you have to know about this book by Bill Chalker, a very famous Australian UFO researcher called Hair of the Alien. I have the book. I don't know if you're going to be able to see it. And it's yet another case from Australia of the same phenomenon. And what was crazy is that the case in the Bill Chalker book and the case that we had in Australia from our database only occurred 60 miles apart from each other over a number of years separated. But on a 3,000-mile continent, we had two of the same phenomenon occurring within 60 miles. The more we dove into it, we discovered that there's other cases in the United States where they're only 200 miles apart and 11 days apart. So that's more than a coincidence. That shows that it's almost like a mission going on and working one locale at a time.
And it's really interesting. I'm very interested to speak with him regarding that research, mainly because one of the causes that we have on this show is targeted individuals, people who for decades have been talking about Havana syndrome type symptoms. And quite literally, we just did a pre-record the other day that will air in a week or so, with Dr. John Hall talking about, hippocampus damage from people, with Havana syndrome, things like that. So, talking with him about that and talking about the similarities between Havana syndrome, some abduction cases, things like that. It is pretty remarkable, the connections that are there with that.
And there's no doubt that UFO researchers are being targeted. As a matter of fact, I know people who believe that they've been victim to something similar to Havana syndrome. Yeah. So I believe it's real, and I believe that UFO researchers are being targeted.
Oh, absolutely. Absolutely. And, it's one of those, whether it's being targeted for gang stalking or electronic hazing, what have you, there is definitely something to it. It's a fascinating phenomenon, to say the least, and horrifying if on the scale that people like Dr. John Hall and myself truly believe it's at. Yeah. So that's a really interesting. What's one of the other cases that we'll be talking about at this year's symposium?
So there'll be another standalone. We have a very peculiar case from Chilliwack, Canada, which is pretty much up in the middle of nowhere in Western Canada. Two hikers come across a small red triangular drone, literally this big, maybe 2 feet All right. And it was threatening them.
Huh.
And it was a couple, and the man actually ran away and left his poor girlfriend
Oh my
behind.
God.
And the thing was clicking. The thing was making hostile gestures towards her. But one of the things we do at MUFON is we love to find correlating cases, and we actually found other cases of the same type of small red object as far back as the 1940s. All right. So did we have little red drones that threatened people in the 1940s and the 1950s? Because it seems that this is a very similar object across decades. And then the next presentation will probably be Mindy Toutfest, who I know you know. She was
very good
formerly the Oklahoma State Director, and now she's Director of Training for MUFON.
Yep.
Her and the new State Director there, Mike Six, I think is his name, they're going to be presenting on a very unusual cattle mutilation case in Oklahoma last year. And that's also a case where we have sent lab specimens to the MUFON lab to check out. But the way we build up to the bovine mutilation cases is it was a particularly strong year for animal kidnappings and animal mutilations. And so we actually work our way up from birds to cats to sheep to coyotes to cows. It's crazy what went on.
Wow.
Last year. Yeah, so we have an abundance. That will be the second suite of cases. We also do a dive into Jeremy Corbell's Iraqi jellyfish video, and our photo analysis team pretty much thinks it's something ordinary. However, again,
I was a big fan of that breakdown of it. I think Mark D'Antonio and them did a fantastic job on that. Yeah.
Yeah, we did an article where we came up with 11 points that sort of say it's either bug stuff on the screen of the camera that's hanging from an Aeroflot, or it's possibly some sort of human-shaped soldier drone quadcopter. I don't know if you've ever seen them. There are a lot of mysterious cases around the United States for the past several years where helicopter pilots were filming these man-shaped objects with two quadcopter things on the shoulder.
Yep.
And we think it might be something like that. And the reason it's so spaghetti-ish is possibly it's a ghillie suit, like a camouflage suit where they could land the drone. And there's a lot of discrepancies in the video. But again, it always spurs us to go look in the MUFON CMS database to see if we had jellyfish cases. And it's mind-blowing what we found. Not only did we find outdoor jellyfish cases that go back to the 1940s, okay, but that there are actually indoor jellyfish that somehow manifest or get into people's houses. And I'm telling you, Chris, I don't want to give it away, but it's scary. All right, these cases that we have of these indoor jellyfish. So this is a banner year for cases of interest, and that's just the one presentation.
Well, and you know that bears to mention, Bob, that and scientifically bears to mention the fact of a case of interest doesn't have to be a solved case. You know, a case of interest can be one that brought up many various points regarding modern technologies, modern techniques of examining new evidence, all kinds of things. So once again, even the idea that the debunked jellyfish video is one of the cases of interest, it's fantastic that it is, because it really does show a means by which not only to break down the evidence on screen as presented, but a way by which to, okay, well, even though this was debunked, let's go back and review previous evidence to see if there's any kind of precedent for that within case files.
Yes, and pretty much they are unknowns, but we just don't want to throw out cases for your entertainment.
Yeah.
We actually try to analyze what phenomenon might be and try to come to some conclusions. And what's great about the cases of interest presentation is that it's an audience participation presentation. So we will ask the audience for show of hands, what do you think? Do you think it's something ordinary, interdimensional, time travel, alien, or something, endemic to, Earth that we've not discovered yet as a life form? And all throughout the presentation, we ask for the audience to participate, which is what makes it so enjoyable.
Yeah.
Right. We were actually criticized for having too many cases of interest solved about 4 years ago.
Yeah.
Where people actually said, we want to see ones that you didn't figure out. All right. So we try to balance it now.
Well, but here's the thing is that it'll be a pretty short presentation. I'm not saying that there aren't, out of every 1,000, a good 5 or 6 that may be noodle scratchers, that the pot's still cooking on, most definitely. But I once again see the fact of the cases of interest, especially solved ones, being a fantastic point, like you're saying, of audience response, a chance by which to get other investigators involved with the process. And even to point out things that maybe y'all hadn't seen in the evidentiary chain, solved or unsolved.
And the bottom line is we don't solve everything.
Yeah.
I'd say probably a little less than 20% stump us, out of for every 100 cases, 20 or 15 to 20 give us a run for our money trying to figure out what they are.
Yeah. No, exactly. And that's just it. Anything beyond that 5 percentile, you aren't really talking anomaly anymore. You're talking at least a hedged bet. So yeah, the fact that 3 to 5% of cases that y'all get every year go unsolved, that would be right inside that slice of unidentified. And that's just it, y'all. How many cases on average does MUFON bring in a year, Bob?
It's gone down a bit. During COVID, we had like a spike because people had nothing else to do.
They were home.
All right. Yeah, they were home and they were outside looking at the sky. So we had, I think, 7,000 during COVID. Right now, we pretty much we're back to the average of about
5,000 a year. That's a good 100 a week. That's 2 per state a day. That's
and it's not it's not homogenous like all spread evenly across the country. It's like you have dense areas like California or Pennsylvania or Florida where you get far more than say Nebraska.
Yeah, like Texas, I think is like number 5 in the United States for sightings, something like that. I know we're up there. But with that being said, let's walk the audience through a case file, walk them through the process from the time somebody goes to the website and starts filling out the form to how you become a case of interest, Bob.
Okay, so Mary in Illinois sees something in the sky and she thinks she was abducted and she saw an entity. So she can click on report a UFO at MUFON and it will tell you on that screen if you scroll down, if you see any of these things, please don't report it because they have well-known logical explanations, at which point you can continue and click on the next button there. It will ask you, did you see an entity, a UFO? Were you abducted, basically? And depending on what boxes you click, it will ask you specific types of questions. When you go to the next field, it will ask you for your, personal information, which is always confidential. If we have if we put out a certain amount of information on the website showing a case narrative and location, it's the witness's personal information is always hidden. And when people who they can submit drawings, photographs, videos. We always ask them, don't name the video, Mary Jones's house at 123 Elm Street, because then, we may have a problem trying to hide your identity. So that's in the instructions. Don't do that if you're going to submit some sort of media. The next thing that happens is Mary will finish the case. She'll hit submit, and then it will automatically generate a number for her. MUFON case 136755, for example. Next, it goes to our CMS coordinator. The CMS coordinator looks to make sure that in Mary's narrative, she didn't say, my best friend, Donna, Widget at 263, Wilson. We remove all of those personal information things from the narrative. Once the CMS coordinator has vetted the case, they will send it to the state director or the national director if it's outside the United States, and the national director and state director can either assign it to themselves or assign it to one of their field investigators. If it's an ERT case where there was an experience or an abduction, there's actually 2 investigators that will work on the case. One that will be investigating the, traditional nuts and bolts aspects of the case, and then also an team member who will contact the witness. If it's a level 3 case, they will actually go out in the field to possibly collect evidence or take photographs. Say there's a ring depression where something may have landed, and there may be back and forth. We try to close all cases within 90 days with the disposition. If there's trace evidence where we need something to go to the lab, sometimes we'll close a case and reopen it later once we have the results of the test. At which point we will give the case a disposition. Basically, if there was a craft, the disposition would be unknown UAV. We use unknown aerial vehicle instead of UAP. Unknown other, where we can't figure out what it is, but it was anomalous. Hoax. IFO, which means identified flying object. And if somebody submits a video from YouTube that they thought was interesting, but they had nothing to do with it, we'll close that case as information only, because it's really a second-hand account. And that's pretty much the dispositions that we use. And that's pretty much A to Z how we do a case.
Well, and, with that in mind, what kind of evidence, aside from witness testimony, once somebody's got their testimony done, what kind of evidence do you guys actively take into your system? Do you take every kind of picture, every kind of file? How does that work?
Sure. Most people submit JPEGs or PDFs, all right, or .mov or .mp4 as far as video and photographs go. Sure. If somebody has the trace evidence, we have kits where we try to collect it in a proper way. We just had a case in Arizona where a person claimed they were abducted and they had gelatin smeared all over them, and that was very interesting, because we know from historical cases like what's his name, Philip Boas in South America, in the sexual encounter, it was some sort of aphrodisiac. In other cases, we believe that they may be decontaminating the witness for whatever reason, and we just collected that sample on scene, and that just got sent to the MUFON lab, and they're analyzing it now. So there's different types of evidence. We're encouraging people now, since Project Aquarius, that if they didn't take a photograph, they didn't take a video, if they could draw what they saw. And some of the things that people draw are incredible. So that's the types of physical or trace evidence or media evidence that we can input into our system. So if a witness sends one photo and then they tell us they have more, we have the ability to say, hey, send the rest in an email, and we can upload them to the the case itself. The other thing that happens with the photo and video analysis is that if the state director feels that it's really extraordinary, they will reach out to either me or Steve Hudgens, who's our director of investigations, and we can authorize the 6-man photo analysis team to look into it. And the software that we use to analyze videos and photos is the same software that the French Air Force uses.
Oh, wow.
So, yeah.
Wow. Now, is there any kind of evidence that MUFON doesn't accept, Bob?
Where are you going with that? Like, let me give you an example.
Let's say I have a Ring camera. And something got recorded by my Ring camera. Would that be something that MUFON would be excited to have?
Yes, we would look at it, and I'll tell you why. In 2018, the United States military had a secret joint operation that went. It was an exercise to deeply penetrate into an enemy country, and basically they had aircraft going from Virginia all the way out to Alaska, and people across the country that night were seeing hundreds and hundreds of UFOs.
Oh, wow.
We must have got like 36 cases, and because of cameras like Ring cameras, we were able to trace and then realized that these were C-130s and that they may have been launching drone swarms across the United States. So if we didn't have some of the Ring camera footage, we might not have been able to figure that out. We also got a lot of radar information through Freedom of Information Acts too on that case, and that's how we figured out it was a secret exercise. So yeah, we take what happens with Ring cameras a lot though is or somebody's security camera in the backyard that's in infrared on the overnight. You'll see these orbs and these squiggly things, and it's really just it's an insect in the foreground of the lens crawling across the lens, or it's a spider web with dew on it that's out of focus because it's so close to the lens itself. We get a lot of that, and that happens with Ring cameras. But yeah, we take everything. Yeah, we take everything, and then we sort it out what's good and what's bad.
Yeah, precisely. And it's fantastic the processes that you guys go through, even in the field investigator manual. Pretty sure I've got the most recent copy. I don't have it with me. But the processes that you send investigators through to learn to spot these things, to learn to find the metadata inside of images, things like that. What kind of advice would you give people who maybe are taking pictures, taking video? Like I'm a backyard astrophotographer. What kind of information along with a picture are you looking for a good report, Bob?
Well, a lot of times people will take pictures of, out of focus stars. And there's a lot of things that people photograph that are really mundane. And because they look out of focus at night, we try to, separate that from what's really important. A lot of people also report Starlink trains now because they think it's one long object. And so what we have to do is we have to cross-reference things like, all the space that week, all of the flight radar 24 data that might come in so that we can tell if it's a plane with a transponder that they're seeing at a weird angle late at night. So when somebody is submitting stuff, a lot of times the narrative won't be complete, and that's why the interviewer has to go back and have either telephone interviews or in-person interviews with the witness to collect even more information. Like we were talking about off camera before, a person said, well, I think I was looking south towards Willow Street, and it turns out that Willow Street was north, so you have to double check everything that a witness tells you.
Well, and even as an observer, once again, I do a lot of backyard astrophotography, things like that. This right here is a clip that I show pretty regularly on the show, Bob, that I captured in my backyard. Pretty cool. Pretty neat stuff going on. colors undulating, things moving around, all kinds of stuff. But that is actively a drifting Sirius. That is the Dog Star Sirius, drifting as it would naturally drift through an unfocused camera lens. Nothing more. It's just an unfocused star that, because I'm zoomed in, looks like it's traveling really fast, at its normal rate of transit. No, nothing different. It's not on a mount that's making it move faster or tracking it. Even the problem is it's not on a mount that's tracking it.
Right. and you'll get camera shake, and at night the camera's trying to focus to infinity, so a star will look like this, which is why there are certain shapes that are more important than others in my mind. When people see daytime metallic spheres, okay, that's unusual. When people see triangles, and Chris, I can tell you that we have hundreds of drawings of triangles in our database, and drawings of the same exact triangles go back to the 1950s, long before we may have had a TR3B or whatever. So we take that very, very serious. Another interesting shape that is becoming more and more common, especially in northern Canada, are massive sized dumbbells.
Yeah. Okay? Yeah, there were, and that was one that just recently made the news from a Pentagon person saying that they saw a massive blue dumbbell craft.
And there was actually, I think it was the Daily Mail in England published a story on a blue dumbbell, which ended up being one of our cases from 2015 in northern Canada. But there's something about dumbbells and Canada, the northern forests of Canada. And I'm talking all the way from Ontario over to the Yukon. It's the same type of phenomenon.
Interesting. And once again, this is the prime candidate. I know people out there are afeared of AI, Bob. And I get that. There's a lot of fluffernutter out there on the internet, so to speak. A lot of just filler that's not necessarily real content, not necessarily fact-checked, things like that. When you're talking about a ChatGPT AI, yes, it is drawing from Google. However, like the one I was telling you about before the show, SciSummary, I use that, and it literally only draws from the data pool that you give it. So to feed it the Project Aquarius archives and make that into a searchable, indexable database where you could just be like, triangular craft, these dates through these dates, and start seeing, sightings pop up immediately, and start comparing and contrasting those things in between them. That's the beauty of AI is once it gets a hold of 50 years of a MUFON database of sightings, how fast we will find similarities like blue dumbbells, things like that.
For sure. I definitely think that AI, I definitely think that disclosure is not going to come from the government. It's not going to come from the Vatican. All right. It's going to be from, MUFON with a really good AI program 5 years from now that can crunch all of this stuff, or, some tech wizard in his bathrobe. All right. Is going to put all of the pieces together, and it's going to be through AI. But I do think AI is very scary. As a matter of fact,
it can be.
The other night I showed my 12-year-old son a movie I saw when I was a kid called O.P.U.S, the Colossus Project. If you've never seen it, it's basically about a supercomputer that joins up with a Russian supercomputer, like an AI, and they take over the world. And I told my son, I'm going, hey, we're there now. That was 1970 that movie came out.
Yeah. Yeah. There you go. The Forbin Project. Yeah. And
very scary movie.
It's interesting, Bob. Even the hypotheses of many forms of alien life possibly being AI or at least AI driven. It's a fascinating topic, and it's interesting to think about. Before we let you go, we have you for about another 10 minutes. What else can people look forward to in this year's symposium?
Well, our keynote speaker this year is going to be Robert Salas, and he's going to be talking on the theme of CIA and FBI and disclosure, especially concerning nuclear facilities and lack of transparency, which is what our theme is this year. Brad Olson's going to be talking about hidden anomalies in Antarctica. We're also going to have a forum concerning possible USOs and undersea bases, and we're have some legalistic speakers talking about, why the government may be hiding some of the things they are. Every year we also have experiencer workshops. We don't film the experiencer workshops because they're very private. Yeah. Our MC this year will be Martin Willis, very well-known podcaster, and Roger Stankovic will be talking on the Havana Syndrome. Our banquet is on Friday night. Robert Salas will be the keynote speaker there. And we also have side trips. You can go to the George W. Bush Library for an extra charge, and also to an Air and Space Museum nearby in Dallas. So there's a lot for families. There's a lot for the UFO enthusiasts. It's a great lineup of speakers with the panels, with the experiencer workshops. There's literally something for everybody. Yeah.
It really is a fantastic event. Of all the events that I not only attend and cover every year, but sponsor, it is hands down one of my favorites. The range of speakers that go on, the range of presentations, as well as the side conversations that happen throughout the day across meals, in the hallways, in the vendor areas. It's fantastic, and a great community of people, of experiencers, of people sharing experiences. So I'm greatly looking forward to it.
I forget, I'll get yelled at if I don't mention this. If you can't come, we live stream it for only $99.
That's right.
Just go to MUFONSymposium.com.
Yep. Absolutely, folks. And, once again, it's going to be right here in Texas this year in the DFW area. Should be a fantastic show. I can't wait for it. It's going to be great. Bob, thank you so much for the time. Thank you so much for coming back on the show. We got to have you on more regularly to talk about international cases, things like that. So, should somebody have a sighting, things like that, where can people reach you, Bob? Where can people get a hold of MUFON? Where can they report their sightings?
Okay, we always prefer people to just go to MUFON.com, which is a different website than the MUFON Symposium website. MUFON.com, up in the upper right-hand corner, report a UFO, and it will take you through all of the screens we just showed you. Your case isn't submitted until you hit the submit button. Always write the number down of the case number that they give you. For people who would like to contact me, about something private before they report a UFO, my official MUFON email address is DOII, Director of International Investigations, DOII at MUFON.com.
Absolutely. Bob, thank you so much once again. I can't wait to see you at the upcoming symposium.
Yes, I can't wait.
It's going to be fantastic. Very, very much looking forward to it. So hold the line real quick while we close things out with the audience, and we'll be right back with you. While you are online checking out everything from not only MUFON and Project Aquarius, as well as the MUFON Symposium, make sure to stop on by Curious Realm. CuriousRealm.com is where you can find all of the episodes. That's where you can like, follow, subscribe, share, comment. That's where you can find our videos section, which has all of the YouTube channels of our guests embedded there. You can also go to the Curious Realm store and get your new copy of the Field Observation and Encounter Log. If you are a paranormal investigator, a cryptid investigator, a UFO UAP investigator, this is a fit in your back pocket investigation log where you can real time write down the observations and encounters that happen to you while you are in the field. So stop on by curiousrealm.com/store. You can get your copy there. If you are putting on an event in the world of paranormal, esoteria, Fortean studies, make sure to stop on by curiousevents.org. That is what we do. We will help you get that event off the ground, provide all the audio, video, things like that. Thank you so much, everybody, for tuning in. As always, it is your open minds, your open hearts that allow the conversation. And without the conversation, humanity does not move forward. So remember, take care of yourselves, take care of each other, and stay curious. We'll talk to you soon. Bye-bye.
Thank you for tuning into this episode of The Curious Realm. Stay tuned for more guests, forbidden topics, and hidden truths. Follow us on social media by searching Curious Realm. To download the official Curious Realm app and view the Knowledge Vault, or become a sponsor of Curious Realm, visit our website at curiousrealm.com. Curious Realm is available on your favorite podcast and video services, curiousrealm.com, as well as KGRA Radio, APR TV, and the official Curious Realm app for Roku devices. Curious Realm is a proud member of the Ground Zero Media and Aftermath Media family of podcasts. For more great shows and members-only content, visit aftermath.media today. Thanks for listening. Stay curious, and remember, the other side is always watching.